Hi, I'm Thomas, foreman here at Farmer Brown's Christmas Tree Farm. Today, I'm going to show you how to plant the perfect Christmas tree. Now, when it comes to Christmas trees, straight tops sell. So when you put it in the ground, you got to be keeping this simple fact in mind. But aside from that, it's a simple two-step process. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. And remember, the more care and attention that you pay to these steps and to each trees you're putting into the ground, the more perfect Christmas trees we'll have come Christmas time. Remember, straight top sell. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, welcome back. The first step of planting any Christmas tree is to dig the hole. But you can't just dig any hole anywhere if you want to grow the perfect Christmas tree. It takes careful attention to the factors surrounding the tree. Pay attention to those, and you will grow the perfect Christmas tree. There are three important things to keep in mind as you're thinking about whether or not a tree will do well in a particular area. Number one is the light. In this particular spot right here, we've got the sun coming in, not a lot of big trees surrounding us. I think this will make a pretty good spot to plant a tree. Second thing then is the level of water that's in the soil. Up here in Washington, we got a lot of hard packed clay and so forth. Not exactly the best for water permeability, but it is what it is. Spruces tend to do a lot better in the water than, say, firs or something along those lines. But in order to kind of think about really whether a tree will do well in a particular spot is, at least here at Farmer Brown's, look at the other trees around you. If you're planting a noble, like we are today, take a look at some of the other nobles that are in the area. Are they having yellowing needles? Are they look sickly? Could be a sign that there's not enough nutrients or maybe too much water in the soil. So perhaps skip that patch and plant a spruce there later instead. So remember, keep track of those important factors: light, water, and the condition of the other trees in the area. By just paying attention to those things, it will go a long way in ensuring that you grow the perfect Christmas tree. Hi there, it's Thomas again, or Thomas's feet anyways. We've already picked a spot for our perfect Christmas tree, and now comes the decision. Which side of the stump do we plant our sapling on? In order to keep consistent straight rows here at Farmer Brown's, we only plant on the west or the east side of the tree. By default, we plant on the west side, but you want to keep an eye on the rest of the row that you're planting in. Perhaps there's a bunch of trees that are over off to the east, and planting to the west will result in a crooked row. Put it over on the east side of the stump then instead. There's no hard and fast rule that says it has to be on the west side. Really what we want are straight, even rows. Another thing to keep in mind too, check the area for any surrounding trees. Perhaps to the east there's a very large tree, and to the west a small tree. In this case, I would say you might be better off putting it to the east, because that large tree to the east will sell in the next 5 years. The small tree to the west won't. It'll still be here. And if we put them too close together, they might crowd each other out for light. So even when you're thinking about which side of the stump to place the tree on, you want to be thinking 5 years in the future. Now, I've already taken a look at this row, and it looks like we definitely will want to plant on the west side of the stump in order to keep this row straight. So the next step when it comes to digging that hole is we want to examine our footing. If you see any hazards, might be hazardous to your footing while you're shoveling, get them out of there. There's no reason to be tripping and killing yourself just because you're working. Another thing too, when it comes to shoveling, you want to have your feet firmly under your shoulders, just like this, about a shoulder width apart. It will help you get the maximum force and stability as you plant the spade in the ground. Now comes time to dig the hole itself. We have here Farmer Brown's unique spring steel shovel. He invented this little sucker idea quite a few years back. It's actually ingenious. It helps to create what's called a root pouch at the bottom of the hole for the roots to set in. He could have filed for a patent for this thing, but he just didn't. I think it could have been $1 million idea, but Forestry Service sells these now, but Farmer Brown has welded and re-welded the shovel himself a couple of times. All right, so digging the hole with our specialized spring steel spade. We want to place the tip about as close to the stump as we can. We want to get our foot just right above here, and ooh, this is nice soft ground. We want to stomp in smoothly and evenly in order to break the ground. If you come up to any roots or rocks, you can kind of push the shovel back and forward in order to work around them and stomp in further. You want to get the shovel to where it's at least 2/3 of the way into the ground. If you can get it deeper, by all means do so. Some of these saplings can have pretty long root balls. Now, once we've got our spade all the way in the ground, we're going to push forward and back again to create our hole. Now when we're done, we're going to leave the shovel forward and pull it out. And I'll show you why we do it this way from the other angle. Now as you can see, while the shovel is in the ground, we can easily move it back and forth now that we've got it planted down all the way. But as we move it back, some of that dirt tends to fall forward into the plate of the shovel. So what we want to do is, before we pull the shovel out, push forward gently in order to compact the earth down, and then pull the shovel out. That will help to ensure that as little dirt as possible falls into the hole and ruins the root pouch that we've created. Now if you look closely in that hole, we might have to do a zoom in here. If you look closely in that hole, there's a little hole way down deep in there that's created by the tip of the spring steel shovel. That's what we call the root pouch. And creating this root pouch is really necessary for ensuring that the roots of these saplings get enough air after they're planted. There's more to these root pouches, and we'll go over that in the next step, which is to put this sapling in the ground. Alright, now it's time to put these saplings in the ground. But while we were digging in that hole, we've already pulled these saplings out of the nursery trench that we keep them in. Sometimes it takes some time digging a row of holes. You don't want to leave these saplings just sitting out in the sun. The roots, the inner root ball, if that dries out on the inside, that plant is pretty much donezo. It has a very little chance of coming back from that. So when you're out digging, or if you just have a few buckets of these saplings that you're doing at once, try to keep them in a cool, shaded area that will help keep the roots from drying out. Right now I've got them in the shade of this tree right here, but if you've got them in the back of the ATV or something like that, try to park in the shade and be mindful of the movement of the sun. If you keep the saplings in the back of the ATV for 2 hours, the position of the shade might change, and you don't want to be keeping them out of the ground for over 2 hours anyway, so it's probably a little too long. You want to try to get them in the ground as soon as you get those buckets out of the trench. But let's go ahead and get these babies in the ground. And welcome back to this exciting shot of a hole in the ground, but it's about to get a lot more exciting in a minute here. In my hands, I have the sapling that we're going to put into the ground. But before we do so, let's take a second and make sure that we can identify a couple parts of this sapling. Up here near the tip, kind of where my finger is touching, you see a couple of lined ridges. That's what's called the crown or the corona. That's the level to which the sapling was initially buried at the nursery. If you look really closely, you can see that there's also a difference in coloration. It's much redder beneath the corona where the roots are, as opposed to above it, it's much browner. The consistency of the bark on the outside is slightly different too. There's lots of little identifying factors that can help you out with that. And then the second part to be aware of is the crook. That refers to the bend that's here in the tree. Now remember, Farmer Brown's Christmas Tree Farm, we sell Christmas trees and straight tops sell. So when we put this in the ground, we're going to want to be aware of that crook to make sure that we have this top coming out straight. Another thing to keep in mind, we need to bury it up to the level of that crown. If you go too high, it's bad. If you go too low, also bad. You want to have it right at that level of the crown. So let's go ahead and put this baby in the ground. All right. So one of the things that I like to do is to take my hands like this and sweep the roots back. It helps you have better control of them. Another thing is too, you're going to want to kind of put the crook in parallel with the hole. That's going to help you, again, help this tree come up straight when it comes up. You're also going to want to rest it against the old stump here if possible. Again, it's one of the reasons we wanted to make that hole as close to the stump as we could. So let's go ahead and rest the roots in there now, getting the stalk close to the stump. We've already got them in that root ball almost, or in the root pouch. So let's go ahead and kind of guide them down, and then once they're in there, go ahead and give it a little shake. This fluffs the roots up a little bit, really helping the air to get through, helps the roots to spread out, and also helps them to get caught in the root pouch. So now, when it comes to closing the hole, we're going to want to start at the crown. So let's keep a careful eye on that. We're going to take the ground here, and we've made just a very narrow hole with this shovel. We're just going to pinch it closed right there around the crown. There's lots of pine needles right here in this soil, so we want to make sure that we're getting some of the actual soil with it too, and not just pine needles. Okay, now that's a piece of garbage, get out of here. All right, once that is secured, the crown anyways, we're going to move to close the rest of the gap on these roots by compressing the ground together. We pretty much just have a little slice in the earth here, so we can just push it all together and push it down, and that will really help to make sure that these trees' roots are secure. Now, when you're compressing the earth here, you are essentially creating a seal. It is crucial that the seal be tight enough that water doesn't soak in too quickly and drown out the roots. That little root pouch that's down there, if the water flows through too quickly, it's going to fill with water and it will drown the roots of the plant. On the other hand, if we compact this earth too tightly, we'll find that there's no air that can get to the roots. We just went to all that trouble of making the root pouch for them. We don't want to crush that closed or keep air from being able to get into the soil. The tree needs to breathe. So when you're compressing it, try to keep that in mind. And after every fifth tree or so, or if a tree seems questionable, especially if you're a novice, give it a little wiggle and a pull. You should see the soil kind of moving with it. That's a good sign. It should feel like if you gave it a firm pull, you could really yank the thing out of there, but it should only have a little bit of give. You see how it just has a little bit of give, it's not flying out. That's good. That's a real good sign of not only a water seal, but also enough porousness that air can get through to those roots. Now, final step, we gotta check to make sure if this sucker is straight. Looks pretty straight, but good rule of thumb is in order to help the tree grow straight, grab a little stump ring or a rock, whatever you've got handy, and just prop it up against the tree like that. It gives the tree something else to grow against, and again, will help to ensure that it grows straight. And we sell Christmas trees, straight tops sell. Well, that's about it when it comes to planting the perfect Christmas tree here at Farmer Brown's. Hope you paid attention because you're going to have to do a lot of these. All right, well, let's get to it.